Today's video is all about winter trends that you can knit. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Knit. My name is Amy and here I talk about all things knitting. Today's video is going to be all about winter fashion trends that you can knit instead of purchase at mainstream fast fashion stores. So this is part of an ongoing series where I have sort of been online shopping to see what the current market is for sweaters and garments and mostly knit items to see what they're promoting as on trend or in style, and then providing you all with matching knitting patterns so you can knit them yourself. Now, there are many reasons why you might want to knit yourself a sweater instead of buy it. I think the primary reason a lot of people like knitting their own garments is because they have a lot of control over the shape and the fit and how they want to style it. Additionally, you also have the freedom to select a fiber that best suits your needs and might be a little bit longer lasting than what they're selling in stores today. For me personally, ever since I started knitting garments, I found myself shopping a lot less for things like sweaters and cardigans because I just found a lot more enjoyment out of making them instead of purchasing them. So if you are the same way, I hope you stay tuned for the video content. So my research method for this video was mostly just online browsing at major stores, places like Abercrombie, Madewell, H&M, Zara, places that I think are considered pretty mainstream fast fashion. And I gathered 5 major categories or themes that I found repetitive across all of those stores. I looked for things that were promoted as on trend or in style by the stores, as well as sorting through things that are considered best sellers to sort of give you an idea of what's popular at those mainstream stores today. I then went into Ravelry and searched their giant database for knitting patterns to find a whole slew of patterns that correspond to those trends. Some of them are pretty close matches to what you'll find in the stores, while other knitting patterns are more reflections of the idea of the trend. And I wanted to gather a list of patterns that were entirely size inclusive for you all. So every garment pattern that I'll be sharing does range from about 30 inches to 60 inches for a bust circumference. Before we hop into the first category, I did want to quickly mention that I am wearing my shift cowl, which is a pattern by Andrea Mowry. If you want more info on the cowl I'm wearing, you can check out my Ravelry project page. That'll be linked in the description box. All right, so let's hop into the first trend. So the first trend I noticed in a ton of these stores this winter are boxy, oversized Aran cable knit sweaters. Seems that everybody wants to be Rory Gilmore this winter, and I can't blame them because it's just a classic look. I think that this trend, it could be considered a trend, but honestly, it also could be considered very timeless. We all know that Aran sweaters go back decades, both by men and women, and they're just a great classic knitwear piece. I saw some places like Madewell has this really oversized cabled cream color sweater. Abercrombie also features this sort of dolman cabled sweater that kind of has a non-traditional style but still reflects that overall textured motif. Aritzia has this very kind of classic cable pattern in a sweater, but you can see it is super oversized and baggy to give it that more stylized look. Additionally, a lot of stores are also promoting cabled cardigans, the same sort of classic Aran motifs, but in the form of cardigans, usually v-necks, sometimes cropped, sometimes oversized, such as the Aritzia cardigan pictured here is one of the more oversized cabled cardigans, whereas Abercrombie has a more cropped version, but still reflects that cable trend. Now, for knitting patterns that fall into this trend, there are a ton of cable knit sweaters. The list is kind of endless, and I just have a few here to share, but I do know that there are a lot of other knitting YouTubers or even blog posts that feature just videos completely dedicated to this style of sweater. So if you're interested in more patterns, I definitely recommend just giving a quick YouTube search, but here are the few that I picked for today's pattern roundup. The first is called Amelia by Sloan Rosenthal. Now this is a worsted weight drop shoulder Aran knit sweater. You can see it has a beautiful cable motif that runs down the front, and there's this beautiful basket weave stitch that goes over the sides of the sweater as well as the sleeves and the arms. This is a pullover that is knit from the bottom up in pieces and then seamed. It's knit out of worsted weight yarn. The suggested yarn is Hudson and Westco Forge, and it's knit on a range of needle sizes. I'm presuming different sizes for things like the ribbing and the collar, but it does range from 3.75 millimeter needles to 5 millimeter needles. That's US 5 through through US 8 needles. This sweater does come in 9 different sizes, ranging from 41.5 to 71.75 inches for finished bust circumference, which is equivalent to 105.5 to 182 centimeters. It's recommended to be worn with about 12 inches or 30 centimeters of positive ease. The next cabled sweater pattern is called the Camellia sweater by Vera Valimaki. This is just another oversized drop shoulder sweater, has a beautiful sort of central panel motif that goes down the front and the back, surrounded by cables, as well as cabling that goes down the entire sleeve length. It's super oversized. You can see how far the drop shoulder comes down on the arm, so I think it really encapsulates that very slouchy, boxy style that we were seeing promoted by a lot of the mainstream stores. This pattern is an Aran weight knit. It's knit on 5.5mm needles, which is US 9 needles. The recommended yarn is Cy Wool Merino Aran. And this sweater does come in 10 sizes, and it ranges from 44 to 78 inches for the finished bust circumference, which is equivalent to 110 to 198 centimeters. It's recommended to be worn with 8 to 10 inches or 20 to 25 centimeters of positive ease. Next up is another cabled sweater pattern that doesn't have as much of a slouchy fit, but still really captures that classic cable knit style that I think is very timeless, and that is the Quinn Pullover by Caitlin Barthold. This is a drop shoulder sweater that has more of a delicate cabling pattern down the front and the back. This sweater is worked in the round from the bottom up and is considered a seamless pattern, as the shoulders are seamed off with 3 needle bind off and the sleeves are picked up and then knit in the round. This is an Aran weight sweater knit on 5.5mm needles or US 9 needles. The suggested yarn is an Aran weight wool, and they use Lion Brand retweed in the sample knit. It comes in 9 different sizes, ranging from 37 to 71 inches for a finished bust circumference, and it's recommended to be worn with 8 to 10 inches of positive ease. This is a paid pattern if you want a PDF version. However, it's also available for free if you're willing to use the ad internet blog version of the pattern. And then lastly, I have one more cabled sweater to share with you all, and that is the Maurizio sweater by Joan Ho. This is another, I keep saying the same thing, but it's just your classic timeless cable knit sweater, very oversized. This one is a little bit different because it does feature a fold over turtleneck, but you can see it has that really slouchy fit, and those really thick cables on the front and back just look really beautiful. This is a worsted weight knit, and it's knit on 5mm needles. It is worked from the bottom up, and you do have to seam the shoulders, but then the sleeves are picked up and worked in the round from there. The pattern designer advertises this pattern as being a great unisex pattern, and it does come in multiple sizes ranging from 39.75 inches to 80.75 inches. And it doesn't say how much positive ease is recommended to be worn on this sweater, but if you want that slouchy look that we're seeing in the mainstream stores, I would recommend, 8 to 10 inches of positive ease. If you want something a little more snug fitting, I would go for maybe 4 to 6 inches of positive ease. And then still in this category, but not sweaters, I do have 2 cardigan patterns to share. The first is the Vivica cardigan and vest pattern by the Westran sisters. Now this pattern I thought sort of mimicked that Abercrombie cardigan that had the V-neck. It was kind of cropped and then had some cables on it as well. This is a DK weight cardigan knit on 4mm needles or US 6 needles. The suggested yarn is Yarbo Select number 1, which is a mohair tweed yarn. This is a drop shoulder V-neck cardigan that's worked from the bottom up. The body does feature reverse stockinette, and the shoulders are joined, and then you work the sleeves in the round. This pattern, in addition to being a cardigan pattern, also is a vest pattern, so I think you get more bang for your buck here and have a lot of choice with whether you want to do something more on trend with the cardigan or something completely different with the vest. I think is really fun. It does come in multiple sizes ranging from 93 to 160 centimeters of a finished bust circumference. There's no recommended positive ease to be worn. However, it does state that this model wearing the blue cardigan here is pictured with 15 centimeters of positive ease. And if you're looking for a cardigan that has a little bit more detail, maybe some more intricacy in the cables, I will turn you towards the Bryce Pillar cardigan by Kerry Bloomer. This is a classic cabled drop shoulder silhouette cardigan. It features a really pretty shawl collar, which I think has another sort of timeless element that I think is a fun addition. It's worked seamlessly from the bottom up. There is no waist shaping, and there is short row shaping at the shoulders that are then finished with a 3-needle bind off. The sleeves are picked up and then worked in the round. This is a DK weight knit on 4.5mm needles. The recommended yarn is Knotty Pine Fiber Co. La Rami Range DK, and it does come in sizes ranging from 34 to 70 inches as the finished bust circumference, and it's recommended to be worn with 2 to 6 inches of positive ease. The next trend I will discuss is a striping trend, but I am going to be very specific with the striping that I'm referring to, and I'll put this picture up on the screen, and I think many of you might recognize this as a very on-trend pattern that we're seeing in a lot of stores this year. This is sort of a striping pattern that doesn't start right at the neckline. It starts maybe halfway down the chest, goes across the body and the arms, but it does end kind of early, like you have very long hems that extend past the ribbing in just a solid color. Some stores will also add sort of a contrast stripe right at the hem of both the sleeves and the body of the sweater. You'll see this in this H&M example. Gap has this nice sweater as well featuring the striping. Madewell has sort of a different take on it, has sort of wider stripes and a chunkier knit oversized sweater, but that same idea of the striping only going across basically the torso of the sweater. Abercrombie features it as well in this more casual kind of nautical themed black and white crew sweater. And me personally, I'm not too caught up with like high fashion trends, but I think this is a trend that might have originated from a high fashion designer as well. So in terms of knitting patterns, striped sweaters are very common, as you can probably imagine. Obviously, you could take any striped sweater pattern and modify it to sort of give you just those torso stripes to match the commercial trends. However, I was able to still find some knitting patterns that really do capture that exact striping pattern. And the first is the Coloring Book Raglan by Amy Scher. This is a top-down raglan pattern that is advertised as having a lot of different modifications that you can make to it to give yourself a really well-fitting sweater that fits all of your needs. You can do a wide sleeve that sort of mimics those commercial sweaters that we were seeing, or a tapered sleeve. There are instructions on how to do the striping. However, if you want to leave the striping out, you can. You can lengthen the body, shorten the body, and it says here that there are at least 14 possible permutations inside this single pattern itself. It is a top-down raglan, and it's knit in worsted weight yarn on 5mm needles. Recommended yarns include Sandnesgarn Alpaca Wool or Coast to Coast Yarn Co. Natural Worsted was also used in the sample knit. This pattern comes in multiple sizes ranging from 35 to 67 inches for a finished bust circumference, which is equivalent to 89 to 170 centimeters. It also features twisted rib, which I think matches closely those commercial sweaters that we were seeing as well. Another pattern with this striping pattern is the Thun by the Blue Mouse. Now this sweater has more of a thicker stripe pattern that I think mimics more of that Madewell sweater that we saw with the chunky knit stripes. And I really like how this sweater has a split hem as well, and 2x2 ribbing I think is really classy. This is a DK weight sweater knit on 3.75mm needles, which is equivalent to US 5 needles. It's top down, seamless, and it does have the instructions on how to do the stripes. It comes in 14 different sizes with the finished bust circumference ranging from 32 to 66.5 inches, which is equivalent to 81.5 to 169 centimeters. It's recommended to wear this sweater with 2 to 6 inches of positive ease, which is 5 to 15 centimeters. And I think this would be just a really classic wardrobe staple to add to your knit collection. There is also the Ilta sweater by Vera Valimaki. This also features that sort of offset striping, but more thin contrast color stripes surrounded by a thicker main color stripe. This is a top-down drop shoulder sweater. It features short rows for good shoulder shaping, and it's intended to be sort of an oversized sweater, recommended to be worn with 6 to 10 inches or 15 to 25 centimeters of positive ease. It does come in 9 different sizes, ranging from a finished bust circumference of 40 to 72 inches, which is equivalent to 100 to 170 centimeters. The last sweater in this stripe category that I will share is the Marseille sweater by Petite Knit. This is sort of a different take on the stripes, but it has that same concept of just a few stripes over the torso of the sweater and not really any stripes close to the neck and no stripes towards the ribbing at the bottom of the sweater. This is a top-down drop shoulder sweater knit in DK weight yarn on 4mm needles. The yarn recommendations include Santa's Garn Double Sunday, or you can use any sort of fingering weight yarn held double. The finished bust circumference of this sweater ranges from 43¼ to 69 inches, which is equivalent to 110 to 175 centimeters. It is intended to be worn with 9¾ inches of positive ease, which is about 25 centimeters. And again, a little bit different than what we're seeing in the commercial stores, but it's just another good striped sweater if you want to look for that sort of offset striping motif. The next category is sort of a combination of two different trends, the first being off-the-shoulder sweaters and the second being boat neck shoulders that might be considered off-the-shoulder, but they're kind of different. So I'll first go over the off-shoulder sweaters that I am surprised I am starting to see in stores. I remember these being very popular in the early 2000s, and as a child growing into middle school and stuff, I really wanted a lot of these sweaters for myself, so it's kind of crazy to see them coming back into the fashion cycle. We can see Zara here is promoting this sort of very off the shoulder with this big fold that goes over the chest style sweater. Abercrombie just released this off the shoulder sweater top with all over, looks like some form of wide ribbing, could be 2x2 or some wider stitch count where it has that big fold over panel and is more form-fitting on the torso. And Aritzia is promoting a very similar style sweater, although it has a ribbed sort of fold over collar, but the body is knit in stockinette, and then the ribbing comes back at the edges of the sleeves and the sweater itself. Now for knitting patterns that follow this trend, there are two very specific patterns that I think really mimic this commercial trend that we're seeing. The first is the cold shoulder pullover by Chantal Miyagishima, who's also known as Knititude. This sweater features a stockinette body with that 1x1 ribbed fold over collar, almost identical to that Aritzia sweater that is out this season. This is a top-down sweater. It's knit in the round and is seamless. It does come in 9 different sizes, ranging from 28 to 62 inch bust measurements. It's meant to be worn with either 1 inch of negative ease or 1 inch of positive ease, depending on how you like the fit. And this is an Aran weight knit. The suggested yarn is Lion brand Chainette, and it's knit on 5.5mm needles. If you're looking for an all-over ribbed version of the over-the-shoulder sweaters, I will turn you towards the Prima Pullover by Tamara Jordan. This is a pretty recently published pattern, and you can see it features the all-over ribbing with both that big collar that goes over the shoulders and more of a fitted sort of corset style body. This is worked top down in the round, and it does include raglan increases. There are vertical bust darts included in the pattern as well as hip shaping. The curved hem is an optional feature. You can also opt for a straight hem. The sleeves are tapered, and there is an option for a little thumb hole at the end of the sleeve if you wish to add that as well. This is a worsted weight knit, and the recommended yarn is Barocco Vintage. The sweater is knit on 4.5mm needles, and the sizes available range from 28 to 62 inches, which is 71 to 157.5 centimeters. It is designed to be worn with about 11 to 20 inches of negative ease, which is 28 to 51 centimeters, but the pattern designer does state that this is seeming alarming, but it all works out because the ribbing is extremely stretchy and accommodating. There is a full sizing chart included on the Ravelry project page that you can preview before you purchase the pattern if you want to know all the specs on the sizing of this sweater. Now I wanted to keep this in the same category because I feel like they're kind of similar, and these are sort of boat neck sweaters, but some stores are calling them off the shoulder sweaters. Like you can see here, this H&M sweater is called an off the shoulder sweater, but it's not as a dramatic kind of fold over collar that hangs over the shoulders. It's just a very wide, maybe what I would consider boat neck collar on the sweater. You can also see something similar at Abercrombie & Fitch is promoting this sort of negative ease all over ribbed sweater with a very wide boat neck, and Aritzia also has this very oversized wide neckline sweater as well. The one sweater that I did find for a knitting pattern that corresponds to this trend is called the Dentel Deuce sweater by Kadri. This features that very wide boat neck. It's knit top down with raglan shaping, and the simple round neck and stockinette knitting I think would make a very nice knitting project. The recommended yarn is Cardiff Cashmere Classic. It's considered a DK weight project, knit on 4mm needles, which is US 6. It does range in size from 38 inches to 64.5 inches for a finished bust circumference. That's 97 to 164 centimeters, and it's recommended to be worn with 5 to 10 centimeters of positive ease. The next trend I'll be covering is crewneck, single-breasted cardigans, and jackets. Now this is a very specific trend that I think mimics mostly the Chanel tweed style jackets. They're very tailored, they feature the very nice rounded neck, they usually feature a small amount of large buttons down the front as sort of a detail that's supposed to be meant to be the focus of the jacket. They are more structured, and generally in the mainstream stores, we're not really seeing them always in a knit fabric. Like this H&M jacket I think is probably a woven fabric, as well as this Aritzia jacket is probably also woven. However, J. Crew is promoting this knit style cardigan jacket both in solids and in stripes, and it has that same silhouette with the crew neck and the single-breasted panel at the front. This trend kind of pulls into some cardigans that I was seeing that are more true knit pieces at the stores, such as Abercrombie's Crew Pearl Button Cardigan shown here. So I was able to find one knitting pattern that I think really captures this trend really well, and that's called McCann by Meiju KP. Now this is a brand new pattern. It says it was just released this month, this December, and you can see from the pictures it is almost a dead ringer for all of those Chanel inspired jackets being sold in the mainstream stores. This knit jacket is knit in boucle merino yarn on the body to sort of give that textured fabric that matches a lot of the woven fabrics that we were seeing in the stores. It does have Chanel influence and that sort of timeless style. It's knit top down seamlessly, which is really cool to know for such a structured knit. You can see it does use two different yarns, one for the body and one for all of the trim, that I think adds a lot of visual interest. The recommended yarns include Ara Yarn Atos and Ara Yarn Love. It's a DK weight knit on 4mm needles, and it does come in sizes ranging from 32 to 64 inches as a finished bust circumference. That's 80 to 160 centimeters. It is intended to be worn with 4 inches of positive ease or 10 centimeters. One pattern that I think captures the idea of a timeless textured jacket quite well is the Emily jacket by Sari Nordland. This is also a newly released pattern just coming out this month. It is knit in a boucle weight yarn to also give the idea of sort of that textured fabric that might be similar to that woven fabric that you see in the commercial jacket. It's knit top down seamlessly and features short row shaped sleeves to sort of mimic a set-in sleeve style. It's knit on 5mm needles, which is a US 8, and the yarn recommendations are varied. You can either use a lighter weight boucle yarn held with a DK weight wool to give the textured look, or she describes using a heavier weight boucle yarn and then using the DK weight wool just for the I-cord edges. In her samples, she used Julie Asselin boucle held with Sanisgarn Double Sunday for one sample, or she also used just Gepard Garn Teddy Deer held single for the body, and then separately used the Sanisgarn Double Sunday for the I-cord edging. This pattern has a finished bust circumference of 35.5 to 67 inches, which is equivalent to 90 to 170 centimeters, and is recommended to be worn with 4 to 6 inches of positive ease or 10 to 15 centimeters. Now the rest of the patterns I'll be sharing in this category are not exactly a perfect match for those tailored jackets. They're more in the category of cardigan, so they might match that Abercrombie cardigan a little bit better, but I still wanted to capture that sort of tailored jacket style with the crew neck, you know, very structured look. So when I was searching for cardigan patterns to fit this trend, I was searching for cardigan styles that included either a set-in or sort of a structured sleeve. I was not looking for drop shoulder or raglans because you're not going to get that structured look from that type of construction. And I was also making sure they had a crew neck and then the single line of buttons down the front. The first pattern in that sort of idea of category is called Farandole by Tricot Design MCL. Now this cardigan has all of those sort of tailored features. I really like the scalloped design at the front of the cardigan. I think it's really different and adds a lot of visual interest, and it looks very classy. And if you knit it in a bright color like the sample here, it's a really nice statement piece. But I think you could also knit it in more of a neutral to sort of mimic that timeless jacket style that we were seeing in the trend. This is knit seamlessly from the top down and features contiguous set in the sleeve. The button band is knit at the same time as the cardigan. It is a DK weight knit on 4.5mm needles, or US 7. The recommended yarn used is yarn by Simone MSW or yarn by Simone KMS. Looks like they used both of those yarns in the pattern. One is a fingering weight merino and the other was a lace weight silk mohair. This pattern comes in a finished bust circumference ranging from 33 1/4 to 63 1/2 inches, which is equivalent to 85 to 161 centimeters, and it's intended to be worn with about 1 to 3 inches or 3 to 8 centimeters of positive ease. The next cardigan pattern I'll share is also by Tricot Design MCL, and that is called Claudine. It kind of mimics that sort of classy, timeless look. I really like the collar on this cardigan. It's in this lace pattern, which is really cool, and also features those contiguous set-in sleeves for that added structural design element. This is a top-down sweater knit in a fingering weight yarn held with a lace mohair. It can also be knit in any sort of DK weight yarn on 4.5mm needles, or US 7. The finished bust circumference of this cardigan ranges from 33 1/4 to 64 1/2 inches, or 85 to 164 centimeters. It's intended to be worn with 0 to 3 inches or 0 to 8 centimeters of positive ease. The last pattern that I'll share in this category is the Hopelessly Devoted Cardigan by Lily Kate France. This, I think, is a more feminine take on that classic timeless cardigan look. It does have that crew neck detail, the big buttons down the front, and the set-in sleeve design. It does feature some pleats and puffy sleeves to create a cozy cardigan. It's knit in bulky weight yarn on 6mm needles, which is US 10. The recommended yarn for the pattern is We Are Knitters The Petite Wool or Drops Melody. It comes in a range of sizes to fit busts from 28 to 62 inches, and it's recommended to be worn with 5 to 7 inches of positive ease. The last category I'll be covering are oversized soft scarves. Now, I saw these in almost every store that I online shopped at. They had them at Madewell in a bunch of solid colors, as well as J. Crew was featuring them. They all are mostly solid with a fringe. Everlane has them, H&M has this scarf here, and Abercrombie is also selling this chunky scarf in a wide variety of colors. The common theme with all of these scarves is they were a very soft, brushed fabric, although mostly synthetic. I think it's a great option for knitters to use a natural fiber that will last longer and feel a lot better on your skin. So when thinking of knitting patterns to cover this trend, it was kind of hard to pick like a basic scarf pattern because all of these commercially made scarves, they don't really feature much texture. It's either just a plain stockinette knit, or if it's woven, it's probably just a plain regular woven scarf. So I do have a few patterns, although I would say your yarn choice is going to influence more how the scarf is going to look than the actual pattern. I say just cast on for a stockinette scarf. If you want to knit it in a tube, you can do it that way so you don't get the rolled edges, or if you want to knit it flat and maybe a garter stitch, that's also an option. So for yarns, I would recommend Drops Brushed Alpaca Silk. You could also use Santa's Garn Borstet Alpaca, Knit Picks Wonder Fluff, or Plymouth Yarn Baby Alpaca Brush are all great options to get that fuzzy, soft look in your finished scarf. If you are looking for scarf patterns, I will turn you towards the Berlin Scarf by Suzanne Mueller. This is a new release, and I think it pretty much matches those commercial scarves exactly. It's oversized, it's wide, it has the fringe at the end, and it's knit on 6mm needles, which is US 10. It's knit in the round, just a stockinette tube, and it says that the fringe is double knitting. The yarn that was used in this pattern was Santa's Garn Borstet Alpaca. Now, if you don't think you have the time or the patience for a very large stockinette tube, you might want to knit something flat, and if you're using any of those brushed alpaca yarns, they are going to hide any texture that you have in your pattern. So I might recommend the All Too Well scarf by Kristen McDonnell. This is a free pattern, or you can buy an ad-free version of it. You can see it does have texture that's very prevalent when you use, a high twist yarn without any extra fuzzies. But if you want to knit this in those brushed alpacas, it might sort of muddle the stitch texture, which would then mimic more of that flat stockinette scarf pattern that you see in the stores today. It does have fringe in the end that I like. It's wide, it's a big rectangle, and those are all features that were common in the commercially trending scarves. And that brings us to the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed going over the trends that I found and the corresponding knitting patterns. Let me know in the comments what you think you might knit this season that's on trend, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Thank you for joining. Bye.